17 new blessing stones have been added since my last blessing stone video, so I think it's definitely about time I updated my tier list for all of them. And this right here is my previous blessing stone tier list that I did ages ago, and I think we can all see that a lot of changes do need to be made, with this being because of two reasons. And for the first reason is just basically a lot of these rankings are just pretty much just definitely wrong, but the second reason, and is also the more important one, is going to be because blessing stones have now been divided into empowerment ones as well as also survival ones, meaning a lot of survival blessing stones have actually become a lot better, with some empowerment ones also becoming better / worse. So in order for me to save as much time as possible, my previous tier list is going to go from looking like this all the way to now looking like this, where we have all of the different changes made, so we can now go on to rank all of the latest blessing stones. The first new blessing stone I'm going to be ranking is aggressive defense, and this is one of Jinwoo's best survival blessing stones because whenever your basic attacks do hit, you can gain a shield equal to 0.5% of his max HP for 10 seconds, and it will stack 12 times, so you can get a 6% max HP shield. So this is very, very good with Jinwoo because it can then allow your hunters to activate the Guardian artifact set for him, giving him even more damage. So for me, this is quite easily going to go all the way up into the S tier. Best defense is a good offense is up next, and this one is really, really bad because it only gives Jinwoo a shield when he does use his ultimate skill, which is not something that he uses too often. And in my opinion, this is just really, really bad, so I'm going to put it all the way up into the D tier. After that, we have crushing attack, and this is our first empowerment blessing stone, and all this does is basically it says the damage of Jinwoo's skills with the break effect will increase by 40%, and this is nothing too special because the only skills that it will somewhat work with are going to be stuff like dispersion on dagger rush, and that's kind of it, making it just an okay blessing stone in my opinion, so I'm going to put it all the way up into the C tier. Desire is one of my least favorite blessing stones for Jinwoo in the whole entire game because when you have 60% or less of your mana points remaining, you can increase your attack stat by 28%. However, when you do then go above that 60% threshold, or you just gain the mana point recovery effect anyways, you'll completely remove that desire attack bonus for 10 seconds, making it one of my least favorite in the entire game. But its attack increase is still pretty decent, which is why I'm going to put it all the way up into the C tier. Up next, we have First Strike Barrage, and this can increase your Jinwoo's attack by up to 22.5%. However, the condition to do this is pretty difficult because upon landing a hit 35 times, will allow you to increase your Jinwoo's attack by 2.25%, making it stack up to 10 times, which is where you get your whole entire increase. And don't get me wrong, the attack increase is pretty decent. However, again, I just don't think it's really that good because it takes a bit too long to get all of your attack buffs, and that is why it is also going to land itself into the C tier. The next two blessing stones, being Intuit as well as also Lightning Speed, are pretty much one and the same thing because they can both increase your Jinwoo's maximum attack by up to 1,540 depending on how many of your stat points you've invested into either agility or intelligence, making them both very, very powerful for stuff like Battlefield of Time. And these two are essentially must-haves for that game mode, but outside of that, they're not really usable in anything else, so I'm going to put them all the way into the A tier for both of them because, like I said, they are pretty much one in the same. Irresistible Force is another new empowerment blessing stone, and just like crushing attack, it does work around skills that do have the break effect. However, instead of increasing their damage, what it says is basically when Jinwoo uses a skill with the break effect, his attack will increase by 8% for 6 seconds, with it being able to stack up to 3 times, so in total you can get up to a 24% attack increase. And the main drawback for this blessing stone is the fact that Sung Jinwoo himself doesn't actually have many spammable break skills, with the only one really being high speed rotation that can be used up to 3 times, so it's kind of the only skill that you can really use to get the full uptime on this attack buff, which is why I'm going to put it all the way up into the C tier because, like I said, it's a little bit too niche and there just really aren't many break skills in the game that Jinwoo can use. Moving on, we do have a bunch of survival blessing stones to now rank, with the very first one being Irreversible Road. And when it comes to survival blessing stones, this can basically increase your Jinwoo's defense by up to 48%, assuming that you do have 2 weapons of the same element equipped. And from my experience playing this game, damage reduction always seems to just be way better than a defense increase, especially when it does come to Jinwoo, and that is why you'll see stuff like Kosuke's Steel Scales up into the S tier because it does exactly that, which is why I'm then actually just going to put Irreversible Road all the way up into the C tier because it's just not very good. It only increases your defense, which isn't a very useful stat for your Jinwoo to buff. However, after that we do have Life, and this is definitely by far one of the best survival blessing stones in the game because just like aggressive defense, this can also give you a shield. However, this shield is way, way bigger because it's equal to 50% of your Jinwoo's maximum HP for a whole entire minute. And just like aggressive defense, this will basically allow your Jinwoo to run a support hunter that does have the Guardian set, giving him a lot more damage. Meaning, to nobody's surprise, this is going to go all the way up into the S tier as one of the very best survival blessing stones in the game. But back onto some awful survival blessing stones, we do do have Mana Powered Shield, and to put this very shortly, is basically this Blessing Stone will give you damage reduction in exchange for mana points, and it's a lot of mana points, so it's one of the worst ones in the game by far, and it is very easily going to go all the way up into the D tier and no better than that. Then after that we have Natural Disaster, which is going to go into the A tier, as it is a very, very good survival Blessing Stone, because in teamfight modes like Guild Boss and Power of Destruction, your team members' damage taken will decrease by 9.5%, so absolutely amazing. And it really does seem like for every one good survival Blessing Stone, another really bad one must come, because next up we do have Penalty Quest Survival, with this Blessing Stone being very similar to Irreversible Road, because it can increase your Jinwoo's defense by 70% when you do proc your Extreme Evasion 5 times. And like I said before, I do prefer having damage reduction over a defense increase, which is why, again, just like Irreversible Road, this will find itself into the C tier. Ravenous Instinct is basically just a defensive version of Desire, because when your Jinwoo's current MP is at 60% or below, you can increase your defense by 50%. And I don't think I really need to explain why this is so bad, because I do think it is pretty self-explanatory. So I'm just going to put this all the way into the D tier, and let's just move on to the next one. Alright then, speaking of the next Blessing Stone, we do have Sandbag, and this one is a very weird one if I'm being honest, because what it says is basically Jinwoo's attack will decrease by 10% for 120 seconds, but after that 120 seconds has actually passed, your attack stat will then actually increase by 40%, giving you, I think, the biggest attack increase you can possibly get out of any Blessing Stone. But just like the attack decrease, this will only last for 120 seconds / 2 minutes, and in my opinion this one is just really, really bad, because if you take it into something like a 5-minute fight against Yogament, for example, for 2 minutes of the fight you'll actually be at a detriment, and it will be completely useless to you because it's reducing your attack. Then for the next 2 minutes you will get a very, very big attack increase of 40%, but for the very final minute it will just become pretty pointless again by just not increasing your attack at all, with all of that basically being why I'm going to put it into the C tier. But of course, next up we do have the penultimate Blessing Stone that is very good at reducing the damage your Jinwoo will take, and this is called Solidify, that can say your damage received will decrease by 1% for every 5 seconds that passes in the stage that you're playing in. But where this Blessing Stone does get good is the fact that it will stack 20 times, totaling in a 20% reduction to your damage taken, with the drawback being that it will actually take 100 seconds for you to fully benefit from this Blessing Stone. And overall, in my opinion, I think this definitely does deserve to go all the way up into the A tier as one of the best damage reduction Blessing Stones, but one that isn't quite as good as stuff like Karsuka's Steel Scales. The final new Blessing Stone is Swift Restoration, and this will help aid with your Jinwoo's healing, and it's a bit anticlimactic because this one is just not very good at all either, because Jinwoo's HP recovery rate will increase by 25%, and then each time he recovers HP, he recovers an additional amount. So this, in my opinion, just isn't very good, and I'm going to put it all the way into the D tier. Alright, there you have it. This is my completed tier list of all of the Blessing Stones for Sung Jinwoo in Solo Leveling Arise, and if you did enjoy this video, or you just found it useful in general, then don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, I will see you all in the next video. Peace!